Twilight could only stutter and whimper as she watched the mare's eyes change. Watch as the pearly whites of those once majestic orbs darken and seep with the color of sticky blood. With only a small outline of white running around the edge, her iris shrank in size as she wheezed and hissed for air, the eye turning and staring right at Twilight herself. A man, apparently a friend of the Bloody One, gently whispered. The mare, Coco, turned her head sharply towards the mare who spoke, her lungs heaving for air and her drool of blood splattering down her chin and neck. Before any pony could blink, before any pony could breathe, Coco lunged upon her friend, knocking her down to the ground and proceeding to savagely beat her with hammering hooves. The mare screamed for help as the other ponies turned tail and fled, screaming as another man colt with similar appearances to Coco came bursting out of the tree line, sprinting with immense speed towards the fleeing crowd. "Sweet Celestia!" hollered Applejack. There's something wrong with him!" Screamed Pinky, drawing her and her friends to quickly discard their picnic and join the rest of the fleeing ponies back towards town. The only one who stopped, the only pony who dared to stop and look back, was Twilight. She stared in horror as two of the bloody ponies ganged up on the poor, helpless mare, her cries weakening as the hoofs, her assailants, brutally stomped and bashed her once beautiful face in. The third colt had managed to catch up to and pounce upon one of the fleeing mares, her wails intensifying as the colt bit down on the back of her neck, ripping at her skin flesh. A sudden cry at the colt looking up, his bloody eyes watching another mare fleeing, running around the corner of a building. With a quick kick of his hooves, the colt dashed forward, chasing the mare and leaving the spazzing mare on the ground. Twilight felt tears trickle from her eyes as the mare shrieked. Her cries quickly turned to savage growls and wheezes as she rapidly rolled towards her side, getting up to her hooves and staring towards Twilight. Her eyes were swimming with the color of blood. No matter how many days passed since then, no matter how many times Twilight remembered the bloodshed and the chaos that followed since in the streets, or her getting separated from her friends, or the moment when she heard the broadcast across Ponyville that a state of emergency had been declared for their town, telling them to board up their windows and to stay inside. Even after the streets eventually quieted and ropes were thrown to each house and building in Ponyville, when the baskets were hung from these ropes and used to ferry precious supplies from one part of the town to another, along with notes and papers scribbled with the latest rumor and reports, or the day that the news of the wall being built around Ponyville reached the library, Twilight Sparkle would never forget. Never, ever, ever forget those eyes, those beautiful, beautiful, glowing red eyes, and the fear that tore at her heart. Ponyville, pleasant present day. Twilight opened her eyes slowly, staring at the darkened ceiling of her library. She stared for the longest time, not moving, barely breathing, just thinking. Thinking about how all this could have happened. Why her? Why Ponyville? There were no answers to be had anymore. There were no reasons. What there was death. What there were rules. Rule number 1. Don't go outside. Twilight whispered quietly to herself as she rolled over and got to her hose. Rule number 2. Twilight. Damn it. Rule number 2. Twilight whispered quietly to herself as she rolled over and got to her hose. Use the baskets. She looked towards the closed window of the second floor, a small wooden rampart running along the library wall. She knew a basket would be waiting there, just beyond that window. She prayed, however, that if she opened it, she wouldn't find any more of them outside as well. It was bad enough that she had made noise and drawn attention to herself. She didn't want her only supply line compromised as well. She ascended the stairs with a painful lift to her step, her head still throbbing from the earlier impact of her fall. Quietly, she moved across the ramparts and undid the 5 locks barring her window shut. With delicate hooves, she opened the window. Up a tiny crack, darkness meeting her eyes. It was nighttime outside, the cool air gently fanning at her messy mane and her weary eyes. Just as she predicted, a straw basket from the rope and pulley hung from the rope and pulley just outside her window. A bushel of apples and a note resting in its comforting hold. She brought the basket in quietly and tipped the contents into a small bin sitting near the window. Putting the basket back outside the pulley and on the pulley, she ran the basket back towards the house across the street. She picked up the note and squinted her eyes, picking up the words despite the darkness, and reading. Dearest Twilight, how are you, darling? I hope everything is okay on your end. Things are all right here. Spiky Wikey is doing his best to keep all our spirits up, despite what happened earlier. Do not panic. Do not be alarmed. Do not panic. Do not be alarmed. Don't panic. Do not panic. But we had a small incident earlier today. We tried our best, but I'm afraid one of our guests just couldn't take being cooped up anymore. Junebug went outside, Twilight. Please, enjoy your apples. Rarity. Twilight felt tears glimmer in her eyes, but she kept her same motionless expression. She dropped the note to the bin and picked it up carefully, with balanced, teeth and hooves, placing it firmly on her back. With delicate balance, she moved back towards the stairs, being extra careful not to have another fall. As she walked towards her kitchen, she thought about Junebug, remembering how she apologized to Spike on his birthday when he tried to get her to fork over the flowers she had been picking. How she had she even remembered that when they had talked that one day about wildflowers when the flower mare came to check out a book about gardening, the same book Twilight had only read the previous night in her closet. She kept Junebug close to her heart and mind as she placed the thin bin on the kitchen table. She kept her along with the other ponies in the comfort of her mind, remembering the good times, the times before the incident, the times that she could only remember now as a thing of the past and no longer the future, a memory. End of chapter 2.